So this week at Columbia University, there was a very highly publicized incident where a student went on what they're calling a racist rant. And there's just nothing that I don't hate about this story. I hate what he had to say, I hate the media that makes him famous, I hate everything involved. So let's talk it out. And I feel like this video is basically kind of a Rorschach test that everybody's going to watch it and see something different. So I'm sure this will go over very well. I should say, anyway, I think this speaks to a lot of issues that are sort of going on today, so I'll show you guys some of the video and let's talk about it.
Built the modern world. We built the modern world. Europeans. Built the modern world. We invented science and industry. We invented science and industry, and you want to tell us to stop because, oh my God, we're so bad. We invented the modern world. We saved billions of people from starvation. We built modern civilization. White people are the best thing that ever happened to the world. We are so amazing, and I love myself, and I love white people.
Say that one more
Fuck
time.
yeah, white people.
Say it right here.
Fuck yeah, white men. We're white men. We did everything. Look, I don't hate other people. I just love white men.
God.
I just love white men.
So first of all, I hate this sort of rhetoric so fucking much. Whenever I hear somebody going on about white people built the world, that's about when I tune out. And this kid gave all of these interviews after saying, oh, he just hates identity politics. You hate identity politics, you are identity politics. And not to be rude, but whenever I hear these people saying about, like, white people built the world, I'm like, bitch, you barely built the IKEA cabinet in your apartment, sit down. I'm not really going to go into the veracity of his claims because I really couldn't care less. I mean, there's a whole history of who was allowed to do what back then and on whose backs. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, every group of people contributed to our modern world. These people, they want to take credit for all the accomplishments of everyone who had the same skin tone as them, but they don't want to be held liable for their sins as well. And this is why I don't believe in judging people based on group identity or skin color. Now, I don't like to slap labels on people, and, you know, I think we're way too quick to just slap that banner of racist on someone. But honestly, when I hear somebody going on with their, like, up with white people shit, it does raise a red flag to me. You know, I guess that pro-white doesn't have to necessarily mean anti-black, but it usually does. Taken at face value, I guess what he said really wasn't so bad. He wasn't saying he hates other people, but I think that's why a lot of us have an instinctually negative reaction to this sort of thing, because it's the mentality that's usually associated with these words, that these are literally the same talking points that you would hear from any white supremacist group. So I was reading through the comments on this video, and there were a lot of people upset saying, oh, you're just not allowed to have racial pride when you're white. And I suppose, but I think the thing is, why would you want to? White is not really a thing. If you're African American, there is a heritage there, and a history, and a culture, and traditions. What exactly is the white culture, or the white history? There isn't one. And yes, by all means, be proud of your heritage and your culture. You know, I'm half Italian and half Jewish, and I love our culture and our heritage. Not gonna lie, I do think Italians are the master race when it comes to food. I'm a food supremacist. But what is the white culture or the white heritage? I genuinely don't know what that would be. It's never once entered my mind to look at my culture or heritage or background as white. But, you know, 100 years ago in this country, when they had signs saying, like, no Italians or no Irish, your experience was very different if you were a French white person or an Italian white person. There really just isn't any one common white history. But the reason I think that this is important is because it really goes to show why the way that we discuss race today is just so toxic. These are the monsters that it creates. And I should say that I'm not by any means saying that this kid is a monster, because I genuinely don't think he is. I think he's very misguided and is probably just rebelling against the status quo of thought at his university. The thing is, the last few years, anti-white rhetoric has become so common and so normal in academia, in the media, in our everyday lives. It's kind of inescapable. So you have to assume that this kid has probably heard this every day in all of his classes. And myself also, you know, I've been called names and told I'm disgusting for being white. And for me, I make the distinction that it's not a black-white thing. That those are radical leftists and that is their ideology. But I think there are people who aren't getting that distinction. So I think you have kids like this then who feel like, you know, you shame me for being white, you put me down for being white, screw you, I'm gonna be proud of being white. Which is probably exactly how black people felt in the first place, so it's just a vicious cycle. Anti-white rhetoric leads to pro-white sentiment, which leads to anti-black sentiment. And so I really feel like this sort of anti-white rhetoric is fueling anti-black views and ideology. You cannot fight racism with racism. If an eye for an eye leaves the world blind, fighting racism with racism just gives everybody a group to hate. And we're at a point now where we have lesbians protesting transgenders, and blacks picketing gays, and gays attacking blacks, and... make it stop. I see the damage that this is doing. You know, when I was in high school, I went to a public school in New York that was probably 50-50 black to white, and everybody just got along. There weren't these constant racial tensions. It just seems like we're going backwards in terms of equality for every group, and I see the regression that is taking place, and I don't understand how so many other people aren't seeing what I'm seeing. And it's not just with race, it's with every group this is what's happening. You know, when you take a 13-year-old kid and he gets expelled from school for saying math homework is gay, you are giving that kid a chip on his shoulder towards gay people that he will carry with him in life, that he probably wouldn't have otherwise. And by the same token, when you have some white guy in middle America working 3 or 4 jobs trying to feed his family who has no money or power, and you tell him how privileged he is, that immediately ends that conversation. That immediately pushes that person further away from caring about racial equality. And so I just think all of these things that are intended to fight racism are just creating more racism. They are empowering bigots and creating new ones. But some people say that we should aim for a colorblind society. But I think what a lot of people on the colorblind side miss sometimes is that if we hope to achieve that, it has to involve confronting disparities and double standards and injustices that exist for people of color. And the thing is, we may all disagree about what those things are and how much of a factor they are, but I think the vast majority of us acknowledge that there are injustices and disparities between the races. And the thing is, if you are somebody like myself who opposes the social justice left, it is even more important for us to confront prejudice and talk about these things, because otherwise we are allowing these regressive extremists to dominate the discussion. We are allowing their bad ideas to be the only ideas on the table for those of us who care about a world without bigotry to the extent that that exists. The ideology of the alt-right and the regressive left is essentially the same. They both believe in us all being judged for everything but the content of our character. But there's another important point that I think needs to be made here, and that is the culpability of the media. You know, when I look at this whole thing and see that this kid has been on every front page from the New York Times to Time Magazine, everywhere, and think, is he really deserving of that? I would say no. I hate this rhetoric and I hate what he had to say, but I think what I hate even more is how the media will take an anonymous, private 18-year-old kid and make him world famous for drunkenly saying stupid shit. If you look at the context of the video, they were probably giving him shit, he was giving them shit, and this is what happens when you have 2 opposing groups of drunk 18-year-olds together at 2 in the morning. Like, why is this news? And I think this kid is very misguided, but I feel like 18-year-olds should be allowed to be misguided without having the entire world sitting in judgment and pointing fingers at them. And at what point do they take responsibility? Somebody from CNN tweeted this.
Time to wreck this little shit. The irony of his rant is that once we make his ass famous for this, he will never accomplish anything, his white maleness notwithstanding. Columbia should expel him, his future should be bleak. Good luck, Chip.
A grown man wrote that about an 18-year-old. They don't take their responsibility and the platform that they have seriously. This is why it is so important to realize that these media outlets who sell us race like it's snake oil, they do not care about solving racism or sexism or homophobia or any of these things that they preach about. This is their product, this is their business, and all of these powerful entities in this country, the media, the politicians, the identity interest groups, this is their business. This is what they are selling us. It is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. So if we ended racism and bigotry and discrimination, they would be out of a job. They don't want us to come together. They don't want us to ever realize that the experience of a working class black guy in Harlem is probably not all that different to a white guy in Minnesota working in a coal mine. I don't know if they have coal mines. I'm from New York, shut up. But, you know, it's probably not all that different. And the thing is, if we came together and realized that and would have to look at who's really pulling the strings in this country, they would be out of business. So they would much rather that we spend all of eternity bickering over a fucking crayon color. This is a picture that speaks 1,000 words. The only way that we will ever overcome our country's racial divide is together, is through mutual understanding, and that's just something that I see so little of today. But here's the important point, and this is the reason I'm making this video. As counterintuitive as it sounds, I feel like we need to be embracing people like this guy in that video. There are people who are just hateful bigots. You're Klansmen and neo-Nazis, and fuck those people. But then I think there are also people who are just stupid, who are ignorant, or maybe it's how they were raised, or they fell in with the wrong crowd, or think they're rebelling against something, whatever the case might be. Yeah. And when we cast that latter category out of society and get out our pitchforks and torches, it pushes those people away from ignorance and towards actual hate. And in that case, we all lose. You know, just to tell you guys a bit of a personal anecdote, a couple months ago, I was with my friend, and we went to this party. And we met this kid there who was like 19. And you know, I'm half Jewish. My friend that I was with was black. So we met this like 19-year-old kid there who was so nice and so friendly and wanting to hang out with us and wanting to be friends with us and stuff. So the next day, I added him on Facebook. I look at his page to see the most horrific, like racist, anti-Semitic, practically literally like neo-Nazi shit I have ever seen in my life. And I'm not talking about like jokes or off-color remarks. This was like serious shit. And my friend and I were both really shocked by that because we just so did not get that vibe from him. He really genuinely did not feel like any sort of hateful person. And so I didn't really know what to do about that. It would have been very easy to just yell at him and leave an angry comment and unfriend him, but what good would that do? Then that's just setting him in those views. But I don't know, it's important to me to try and practice what I preach, and I hope that someday soon I'll have the maturity or the wherewithal to sit him down and go for a cup of coffee and say, you know, hey, that's not cool. Don't be a racist. You know, it's uncomfortable. None of us want to do that. Nobody wants to be like, hey, I'm gonna go get coffee with this 19-year-old racist kid. But if we don't, we just push them away and set them more into their views. Because maybe there's nobody in his life who has said that to him. Maybe I'll get nowhere with it, but maybe I will. So that's why I think we need to be embracing people like him and people like this guy in the video. If we hope to combat outrage culture, then we have to do everything in our power in our own little ways to fight against it. The opposite of outrage is compassion. There was a poet named Edwin Markham who said, "He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in." And that's exactly what I think all of us need to do. We need to draw the bigger circle. We need to include people that we are outraged by, people that we disagree with, people whose views we might even hate. And, you know, there's a new year coming up, and I'm hoping that maybe there's a way that we can help our culture be a little bit better than the current year. So with this new year approaching, I would invite everybody who is interested to draw a circle. Have a conversation with somebody who has different views than you, somebody whose views you hate, somebody you disagree with. You know, if you're liberal, hang out with a conservative. If you're conservative, hang out with a liberal. If you're pro-choice, get to know a pro-lifer, or vice versa. If you think somebody is ignorant about gays or doesn't understand racial issues, talk to them. Get to know where they're coming from. And you don't have to agree, but if we can just understand each other's shared humanity a little bit more, I think that's the only way to move on from all of these divisions. Alright, well, I have rambled long enough. Jesus Christ, this is like a fucking 30-minute thing over a 1-minute video. Alright, well, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel. My name is Mikey, and I am not wearing pants right now.